Okay, so for this video lesson, we'll be discussing on how to simplify rational expressions. So for us to learn on how to simplify, we'll be showing different kinds of examples. And let's start with our first example. We have here 40 over 60. So this is one example of a rational expression, and we need to simplify this one. Basically, when we say simplifying rational expressions, it's actually reducing it to its lowest term. So sa elementary ninyo na ginana ninyo sa mga fractions, ang final answer is dapat lowest term. So maura gyapon na siya nga concept, no? When we talk about simplifying rational expressions, what we are actually going to do here is to reduce it to its simplest form. Okay? So for here, our first example is 40 over 60. So what will be the simplest form of 40 over 60, and what should be the step on simplifying this? Okay, now the first one is we need to get the greatest common factor of the numerator and the denominator. Okay, so unsa ang greatest common factor sa duha? Okay, now here, as you can see, 40, okay, makita ninyo danhin, no? Si 40, pwede nato na siya i-factor nga 20 times 2. Okay, so 20 times 2 is equals to 40. And then for 60, we can factor that as 20 times 3. There are so many ways that we can factor 40 and 60, but then again, take note that what we are looking for is the greatest common factor, and it should be observed that the greatest common factor between 40 and 60 is actually 20. Now, after getting the greatest common factor, we will cancel. Let's cancel out the greatest common factor of this one. Okay? Because unsa may mahitabuan na 20 divided by 20 is simply equals to 1. Okay? So, pwede nimo ma-cancel out ang common factors, and that would be considered or just equivalent to 1 already. So, after canceling it out and then reduce it to equals to 1, it will now be in this form, no? So, 40 over 60 or 40 divided by 60 is equals to 1. 1, gikan si 1 mo ni siyang sa 20 over 20. And that is times 2 over 3. Kaya mo naman lang nabilin, no? So, 2 over 3. So, what is 1 times 2 over 3? That is simply 2 over 3. So, the simplified form of 40 over 60 is actually equals to 2 over 3. Alright, so let's now go to our second example, and this time we have 45a squared b over 30ab. Again, the first part of the solution is always to get the greatest common factor of our numerator and denominator. And for this one, these are the factors. So for 45a squared b, we have 15ab times 3a. And then for 30ab, we have 15ab times 2. Pangutana, giunsa na siya pagkuha. Niagi na taani, no, sa common monomial factoring. So we'll just have a quick review on how we did this one so that you could be able to understand it more better. So of course, kang 45a squared b, ang atong mga prime factors are this one. We have 5 times 3 times 3 times a times a times b. Muna ang mga prime factors ni 45a squared b. And of course, the prime factors of 30ab is 5 times 3 times 2 times a times b. And of course, the next step is actually to identify all of the common factors. Now, for this one, 5, 3, a, and b are the common factors. And that means our GCF here would be 5 times 3 times a times b, and that is equals to 15ab. So, kung makita na ninyo diha, naatay 15ab, and naaputay 15ab, kay mo ni siya ang greatest common factor sa ilahang duha. Now, after getting the greatest common factor, no, the common monomial factor, we check unsay mahibilin. Of course, 45a squared b, that's 3 times a. So, munang naa kay 3a din ha. And then sa 30ab, ang nabilin is 2. So, munang 2 ang naa din ha sa iya hapod sa ubos after getting the 15ab. Now, since we're done factoring already and we know already what's the greatest common factor, of course, the next step would be to cancel the greatest common factor, and of course that would be cancelled out, and this would be equals to 1. Because again, 15ab divided by 15ab, that's just equals to 1. And to simplify the expression after getting the GCF, again, this will be 1 already. So this will now be equals to 1 times, kanidayo, no? Ang 3a over 2, no? So we have 1 times 3a over 2, and that is equals to 3a over 2. And this means then that the simplified form, okay, of this rational expression 45a squared b over 30ab is actually equals to 3a over 2. Okay, let's now go to our next example, and this time we have a squared plus 2a over 2a plus 4. Now, our rational expression now is actually binomial numerator and binomial denominator. But then again, the process would still be the same. The first part is to identify the greatest common factor between the numerator and the denominator. Okay, and for this one, this is how it looks like already. Ang atong a squared plus 2a, mahimo na siyang a times the quantity of a plus 2. And then ang atong 2a plus 4, mahimo na siyang 2 times the quantity of a plus 2. So, we can see here that the greatest common factor is a plus 2. Okay, kung makita. Pero ang pangutana, giunsa ni siya pagkuha. Okay, so, pakita na ko. So, mag-una ta sa numerator, no? Let's start with the numerator. We will get the common. What's the common monomial factor of a squared plus 2a? Again, if you can recall here, we will get the prime factor of a squared, which is a times a. And then, ang sunod dayon si 2a. Okay, kay 2a man na iya hadya. So, what are the prime factors of 2a? That's 2 times a. Next, you get the greatest common factor. And the greatest common factor here is a. So, automatic mo ni siya ang mahimong common monomial factor. So, makita ninyo na ay a danhi. No? That's the common monomial factor. And then, kani, mo ni siya ang nabilin after paggawas sa common monomial factor. So, if you can see sa a squared, ang nabilin is a. And so, munay na ay a diha. And then, sa 2a, ang nabilin kay 2. So, munang naapog kay 2. So, we're done with the numerator. Now, let's go with the denominator. How was it being factored? Again, let's start with the 2a. No, kay 2a man ni siyang naadanhi. And the factors of 2a are 2 times a. Now, if we go to 4, of course, ang factors of 4 is 2 times 2. And again, getting the greatest common factor, and that is 2. And that would mean that for the denominator, the common monomial factor is 2. So, atoan na siyang gibutang din ha, and then isulat unsay nabilin. We have a plus 2 here. Why? Because if you can see, sa 2a, ang mabilin diha ang a, and then sa 4, ang mabilin is 2. So, munang naataana niya nga value. Okay? Now, after getting the greatest common factor, the next step as usual is to cancel out this greatest common factor. And of course, the greatest common factor are a plus 2. So, that will now be cancelled out, and which is equals to 1. Automatic. Then, to simplify the expression, it will now be like this. No? Kay 1 naman kaha ni. So, we will have here a over 2 times 1. And of course, a over 2 times 1 is simply a over 2. So, that means the simplified form, no? Ang simplified form sa atong rational expression nga a squared plus 2a over 2a plus 4 is a over 2. So, we go to our final example, and we have here 9a plus 15 over 3a squared plus 8a plus 5. So, this is now a numerator that is binomial and a denominator that is a trinomial. So, again, the first step is always to identify the greatest common factor between the numerator and the denominator. And let me show you first how it's being factored. Now, here, for 9a plus 15, that can be factored as 3 times the quantity of 3a plus 5. And for this one, actually, this is a general trinomial. Okay, so in the general trinomial, it can be factored as a plus 1 and times the quantity of 3a plus 5. Again, the question is, how did we arrive to this one? So, let's have this. Okay. Again, we start with our numerator, no? So, 9a, ang yung prime factors are 3 times 3 times a. And of course, sunod na to atong i-factor is the 15. And the prime factors of 15 is, that's 3 times 5. And if you can see here, the greatest common factor is 3. And that means, mo ni siya, no? Ang atong CMF or the common monomial factor. Automatic man si GCF mo na ang ato ang CMF. So that's why we have 3 here. And after that, kanida yun ang nabilin. So if you can see, after nato makita ang common factor nga 3, kang 9a ang nabilin is 3 times a. So mo nang naa kay 3a. And then kang 15 ang nabilin is 5. So that's why you have 5 there. Okay? So that's how our numerator is being factored. Now let's go with our denominator. Yun sa nato ni siya pagkuha. Again, we will have to perform the general trinomial for this one. Okay, now looking at this table here, our first term here, a squared, has a 3 nga number nga abay, no, coefficient. And the possible factors of 3 is only 3 and 1 because 3 is a prime number. Okay, and then here, the next thing is that we need to get the factors of the last term, and the possible factors of 5, because that is also a prime number, is only 5 and 1. And the next thing that we need to do is to get the possible combinations. And from the possible combinations, no, dapat mugawas ang sum of 8, kay naa may 8 sa middle term. Now, if you can see here, naa na tayo mga possible combination, no? Una kay si 3, atong gi-partner kang 5. So, we have 3 times 5. And then si 1, atong gi-partner kay 1. We have 1 times 1. Now, 3 times 5 is 15. And 1 times 1 is 1. And kung i-add na to 15 plus 1, that is 16. But take note nga atong gapangitaon kay 8. So, this is not the combination. Now, ang atong gibuhat diri, gibaylo na pod nato, no? Si 3, ato na pong gi-times kang 1. Kaning 1 danhid. Okay, so 3 times 1 is 3. And then kani din si 1, gi-times nato kang 5. And 1 times 5 is 5. And when we add that, that's actually equals to 8. So, but pasabot, kanin siya nga mga factors ang ato ang gamiton. Okay, naadanhi. But then again, if you can remember, sa atong pag-discuss sa general trinomial, wherein a is not equals to 1, diba? Ang ato is that kinahanglan nato i-interchange tungod sa FOIL method nga mahitabo. So, but pasabot, si 5, atong i-partner kang 3, and then si 1, i-partner nato kang 1 gihapon. So, muna siya ang mahitabo dinhi. Okay? Now, take note, si 3, gikan na siya kang a squared. So, ang but pasabot ani na akay 3a, ug na akay 1a or simply a. Okay? Kay gikan man na siya, no, sa a squared. So, ang yang factor ana is automatic. This means 3a and a, kay 1 man. And so, that means, kanig, ang yang but pasabot ani is a, and this one is 3a. So, kung makita ninyo, si 3a, atong gi-partner kang 5. So, that's why you have 3a plus 5. And then si 1, which is actually a, is partnered to 1. So, that's why you have a plus 1 there. Okay? So, muna siya ang pagka-factor ana niya. Now, the next thing that we need to do is, as usual, cancel the greatest common factor. And, of course, for this particular example, that is our greatest common factor, and that will now be equal to 1. And of course, after canceling it and expressing it equals to 1, the simplified form will now be si 3 over a plus 1. Mo ni siya, no? Si 3 over a plus 1 times 1, and 3 over a plus 1 times 1 is simply equals to 3 over a plus 1. So, the simplified form of our rational expression 9a plus 15 over 3a squared plus 8a plus 15 is equals to 3 over a plus 1.